Hello, my name is Lisa Lewis and I'm the Library Services Manager for Show Public Library. It is my great pleasure to introduce Chief Joe Shelley with the Show Police Department and Chief Bryan Savage with Timber Mesa Fire Department as they share with you the beautiful story of the Polar Express. This is an annual event and is usually held in the library itself. We all know that 2020 brought some unexpected changes, and we have all had to adjust how we do things. We didn't want you to miss out on this magical moment and hope you will enjoy this special reading of the Polar Express. From all of us at the library, we wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas.
Welcome, everybody.
Hey guys, how you guys doing?
Thanks for joining us again for the reading of the Polar Express. I think this is our third year together reading this.
It is, third year. 2020, what a year, huh?
Absolutely.
Wow, it's a lot of craziness out there. Like we said, we were talking about this earlier and we said, gosh, it was just yesterday, it was July 4th. We were just celebrating, we missed the parade this year, but it just flew by and we're only a couple weeks away from Christmas.
It's gone quickly, but hopefully everybody's having a good winter and a Merry Christmas to come.
Yes, I hope so. Well, let's get started on the Polar Express. On Christmas Eve many years ago, I lay quietly in my bed. I did not rustle the sheets at all. I breathed slowly and silently. I was listening for a sound a friend had told me I'd never hear. It was the sound of ringing bells of Santa's sleigh. There is no Santa, my friend had insisted, but I knew he was wrong. Late that night, I did hear sounds, though not of ringing bells, but from outside came sounds of hissing steam and squeaking metal. I looked through my window and saw a train standing perfectly still in front of my house. It was wrapped in an apron of steam. Snowflakes fell lightly around it. A conductor stood at the open door of one of the cars. He took a large pocket watch from his vest, then looked up at my window. I put on my slippers and robe. I tiptoed downstairs and out the door I went. All aboard, the conductor cried out, and I ran up to him. He said, well, are you coming? And I asked, where? He says, why, to the North Pole, of course, was his answer. This is the Polar Express. I took his outstretched hand, and he pulled me aboard.
The train was filled with other children, all in their pajamas and nightgowns. We sang Christmas carols and ate candies with nougat centers as white as snow. We drank hot cocoa as thick and as rich as melted chocolate bars. Outside, the lights of towns and villages flickered in the distance as the Polar Express raced northward. Soon, there were no more lights to be seen. We traveled through cold, dark forests, where lean wolves roamed and white-tailed rabbits hid from our train as it thundered through the quiet wilderness. We climbed mountains so high, it seemed as if we would scrape the moon. But the Polar Express never slowed down. Faster and faster we ran along, rolling over peaks and through valleys, like a car on a roller coaster. The mountains turned into hills, the hills to snow-covered plains. We crossed a barren desert of ice, the great polar ice cap. Lights appeared in the distance. They looked like the lights of a strange ocean liner sailing on a frozen sea. There, said the conductor, is the North Pole.
The North Pole. It was a huge city standing alone at the top of the world, filled with factories where every Christmas toy was made. At first we saw no elves. They're gathering at the center of the city, the conductor told us. That is where Santa will give the first gift of Christmas. Who receives the first gift? We all asked. The conductor answered, he will choose one of you. Look, shouted one of the children, the elves! And outside we saw hundreds of elves as our train drew closer to the center of the North Pole. We slowed to a crawl. So crowded were the streets with Santa's helpers. When the Polar Express could go no further, we stopped and the conductor let us outside. We pressed through the crowd to the edge of the large open circle. In front of us stood Santa's sleigh. The reindeer were excited. They pranced and paced, ringing all the silver sleigh bells that hung from their harnesses. It was a magical sound, like nothing I'd ever heard. Across the circle, the elves moved apart, and Santa Claus appeared. The elves cheered wildly. He marched over to us, pointing to me, and said, "Let's have this fellow here." He jumped into his sleigh. The conductor handed me up. I sat on Santa's knee, and he asked me, "Now, what would you like for Christmas?"
I knew that I could have any gift that I could imagine, but the thing I wanted most for Christmas was not inside Santa's giant bag. What I wanted more than anything was one silver bell from Santa's sleigh. When I asked, Santa smiled. Then he gave me a hug and told an elf to cut a bell from a reindeer's harness. The elf tossed it up to Santa. He stood holding the bell high above him and called out, "The first gift of Christmas." A clock struck midnight as elves roared their approval. Santa handed the bell to me, and I put it in my bathrobe pocket. The conductor helped me down from the sleigh. Santa shouted out his reindeer names and cracked his whip. His team charged forward and climbed into the air. Santa circled once above us, then disappeared into the cold, dark polar sky. As soon as we were back inside the Polar Express, the other children asked to see the bell. I reached into my pocket, but the only thing I felt was a hole. I had lost the silver bell from Santa Claus's sleigh. "Let's hurry outside and look for it," one of the children said, but the train gave a sudden lurch and started moving. We were on our way home.
It broke my heart to lose the bell. When the train reached my house, I sadly left the other children. I stood at my doorway and waved goodbye. The conductor said something from the moving train, but I couldn't hear him. "What?" I yelled out. He cupped his hands around his mouth and yelled, "Merry Christmas!" The Polar Express let out a loud blast from its whistle and sped away. On Christmas morning, my little sister Sarah and I opened our presents. When it looked as if everything had been unwrapped, Sarah found one small box behind the tree. It had my name on it. Inside was the silver bell. There was a note. "Found this on the seat of my sleigh. Fix that hole in your pocket. Signed, Mr. C." I shook the bell. It made the most beautiful sound my sister and I had ever heard. But my mother said, "Oh, that's too bad." "Yes," said my father, "it's broken." When I'd shaken the bell, my parents had not heard a sound.
At one time, most of my friends could hear the bell, but as years passed, it fell silent for all of them. Even Sarah found one Christmas that she could no longer hear its sweet sound. Though I've grown old, the bell still rings for me, as it does for all who truly believe.
Wow. Still good. I hope that everybody out there can still hear the bell.
Me too.
That's really good. So I hope everybody has a great Christmas. 2020 is still going to be a good year for all of us. And then we look forward to the new year for a safe and happy new year for all of us. Nice, healthy one.
Absolutely. Merry Christmas, everybody.